Hi, everyone, and a very welcome to this month's episode of the Releasing the Real You show, where we cover anything that relates to gluten-free, celiac disease, and healthy lifestyle. So, very excited to have Cate with us today. So, thanks, Cate, for joining us. Cate, I
Right?
met you as Cate the Coeliac, okay, which
Yeah,
is your Instagram handle as well.
yeah.
But we'll get to that at the end again. So, tell me a little bit about you. How long have you been gluten free? What age were you when you got diagnosed with celiac disease?
So I was diagnosed at 9 years old. So I've had celiac disease now for just over 16 years, coming up to 17 years. So obviously that means I've had it through lots of my childhood, my entire teenage years, and currently my whole adulthood. Lots of celiacs in the family, so it's quite common in our family. But yeah, so my journey was quite good. I had quite a positive journey to getting diagnosed. We had two celiacs in the family previously. However, they were had celiac on the other side of the family. So at that time, we didn't know it was my granny. Their granny from their side of the family had it, not from our side of the family, who now is diagnosed. Um, so yeah, the process actually was simpler than a lot of other people's. But I did have had to have an endoscopy, which I know at 9 years old isn't very common anymore. I don't know if from other people, that's what I've heard. Not many people that are children get it anymore, which is nice because it wasn't the nicest experience. I still remember it quite vividly, and it was about 16 years ago.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, so basically, I went to my GP and they firstly put me on a dairy-free diet because obviously there wasn't really celiac technically in the family. We did mention there was celiac from the cousins, but obviously there wasn't a genetic link, and obviously celiac is genetic. So yeah, they put me on a dairy-free diet and it was over Easter holidays. So as you can imagine, the Easter egg selection 16 years ago was basically zilch. There was nothing. And as a 8 year old, that's quite sad. And I remember getting this very sad looking egg. There was one choice. So obviously that's the one I had. Anyway, I kept a food diary for about 2 weeks, went back to share the results, and basically no change. I was still getting all my normal symptoms, and my symptoms are still
What
the same now.
weight? Yeah.
So yeah, so I get really bad stomach cramps to the point where I'm like screaming in pain, really bad diarrhea and tiredness were my main symptoms, but like the symptoms would last for like a 5 hour period. So it would be a very long time. And it weirdly enough, I don't know if this is just me, but every time I get ill, it's always in the night. Every time. I've never been ill in the day, ever. With any time, which is very strange. I don't know whether my body just is when it starts to relax that it realizes. I'm not sure. I don't know if there's some sort of
Mhm.
science to it, but I to this day have never been ill or started having symptoms that I notice until it's the evening or in the middle of the night. I wake up with the symptoms, which I think is quite. I don't think that's very common. Maybe anyone let us know in the comments. I don't
It's
know.
the time where the body recovers, so
Mm,
potentially could be.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But
So
as you say, most people are, quite a lot of people from what I hear, are ill straight away or within an
yeah,
hour or anything
yeah.
else. So, yeah.
Yeah, mine is never usually that. I'd say probably 3 or 4 hours. I think obviously maybe my digestive system is just a bit slower. I'm not sure. But if I know what caused it, it's usually within 3 or 4 hours. But obviously most of the time you don't know what it is. And I think that's one of the hardest parts is not knowing because then you don't know what to learn from because you don't actually know what happens. So you're like, oh, that's a bit of a guessing game, and you're never going to know actually what it was unless you specifically realize that you've had
Yeah.
something. Yeah, so basically, then they decided, okay, we're going to do a blood test. No, sorry, I went for I went gluten free for a few weeks, and the changes were instant, pretty much within a few days. And I was quite a hyper child, always running around, so much energy, and then suddenly not have energy. That's what made my parents originally take me to the doctor. And obviously, a lot of stomach problems, diarrhea, not very, all the
So did
time as
you have
well.
those stomach problems, diarrheas, and since you were kind of really like a toddler, or did it come
No,
at
it came up maybe. 6 months before, like within 6 months of sort of being diagnosed. So it was quite a change. But then thinking back, my parents said that when I was a toddler, I used to sleep and like kick my legs like before I could talk. And they're thinking maybe even those sort of things, maybe I was having stomach pains that they didn't realize because obviously I couldn't speak. So
Mm.
different things like that they think about sometimes recently. They were telling me these different things like maybe that was a symptom, but we just didn't know.
Yeah.
So we're not sure obviously how long I could have had it. Um, but yeah, so went and did the gluten free. Obviously, it was instant. They were very certain it probably was celiac or gluten intolerance. So they did the blood tests, and my results were like such a high level that I had celiac. Like it was obvious that it was, but unfortunately at that time it was a requirement in my county anyway to have an endoscopy. But the reason they didn't actually think I was celiac is because I was actually very much above the levels that I should have been. I was very tall for my age. I was very, the right weight, the right height that I should have been. I was actually exceeding that. So that's why originally they didn't think I was celiac. That's why they didn't test me for it originally. Because a lot of the time, obviously, celiacs are not
Yeah.
digesting their nutrients properly and could be below. But actually, I was exceeding. So that's why they didn't think it was. And my mum told me the other day that one of the consultants we saw actually said he's virtually certain I didn't have celiac disease. And when I got diagnosed, he called up to apologize because he obviously was wrong.
Yeah.
This is why you have to advocate for yourself and say, look, this, some doctors, it's only the testing that can prove,
Yeah.
if you have it or not. Um, anyway, so I went for the endoscopy, and not the best experience. I remember obviously when you're younger, you get put to sleep, but I remember them doing it. It wasn't the nicest, obviously, for a 9-year-old as well. And having all these nurses and doctors, there was about 10 just surrounding me. And then I woke up, and the first thing my mum said they offered me is a piece of gluten toast.
Mm.
I was like, mum was like, absolutely not. She was like, if this is like her diagnosis and she gets results tomorrow, that's it. She's starting now. Like, this is
Yeah.
it. And the nurse was like, no, I'm sure it'd be okay to start tomorrow. And my mum was like,
It's quite
no. She was like,
interesting
no.
because when I got diagnosed and I had the endoscopy, before
Yeah.
I had the procedure, they asked me what I wanted to eat for afterwards.
Ah, did
So
they?
I went private. So
Yeah.
I had the luxury of choosing. So I had to look at the menu. I'm like, I don't know what I want. It was 8 o'clock in the morning or 7:30. Do I know what I want at lunchtime? I do not know.
Yeah.
So anyway, I ordered a chicken sandwich. So same as you. That
Oh,
I had to eat when I woke up because you know
yeah. That's the thing because they want you to, don't they?
yeah. But what was
Yeah.
interesting is after the when I got half diagnosed, if I can call it that way. So after the endoscopy, my specialist came back to me and he said, "Look, I'm 95% sure between the blood test and the endoscopy that you have celiac disease. But
Yeah.
obviously, you got a week now until you got the biopsy results. So you
Yeah.
got two choices," he said to me. You can go
Yeah. This is the
gluten-free
thing, isn't it?
now. You can go gluten-free now, or you can go and have all the stuff you will never have for the rest of your life for a week. So,
Yeah.
there's no right or wrong. But yeah, I mean,
I think for me, because my symptoms were so severe, I know I wouldn't have wanted
yeah.
to. And obviously, at that age, obviously, my parents were making all those decisions. And
Yeah.
straight away, I think because they saw how unwell I was.
Hmm.
So, also, my sister's only been diagnosed 2 months ago.
Yeah.
So my immediate family, I was the only one. Now it's me and my sister, but she has no symptoms, absolutely
Okay.
nothing. So for her, it's very different.
Yeah.
And also, she won't know if she's been glutened by a crumb because she doesn't get any symptoms. Compared to me, I will know about
Yeah.
it. So we're very different in that kind of thing. She was, as soon as she found out that she might have it, she went and ate as much as she could before she had all the
Yeah.
tests. Obviously, you
Mhm.
have to have all the tests anyway. But for me, I wanted to avoid it all because
Yeah.
obviously it was making me so unwell, and I could physically, I knew it was. But for her, it's not. But obviously internally it is. But like on the outside, she
Yeah.
doesn't get any symptoms, which is very interesting.
Mm.
She's one of the only people I know that's asymptomatic, actually. Most of my cousins and my like family have some sort of symptoms, whether that's skin related or like, stomach pains or being sick,
Yeah. So how
But
come
yeah,
she
I don't
got
know many people that are
diagnosed?
asymptomatic actually.
How come she got diagnosed?
So again.
What
Oh,
made
so she
her
got
get?
diagnosed with anemia in the new year.
Okay.
And she has had celiac testing before because obviously she's eligible because
Yeah.
I'm celiac.
Yeah.
So she's had it a few times and always been negative, had no tests have ever showed it. And then they thought, okay, we'll test you for celiac again because it's so many people in our family have it. 10 of us have it that it's like so
Mhm.
common that they thought it's just worth testing her again. And obviously because she's anemic, they thought, well, you're not obviously not absorbing properly. She also did go vegetarian a few months before. So I don't know whether that's potentially linked. She's not having the right amounts of things.
Mhm.
And then it was straight away, her levels were nearly as high as mine, which is so
Oh,
interesting
wow.
because a few years ago she wasn't. And then suddenly she is. It's so difficult. And I get why
That's
people don't understand as an outsider
well, I
because it
think
doesn't make
that's
any sense, does it? Like it
well,
doesn't when you think about it. It does, but it doesn't. I know it
to
gets
a
triggered,
point it
but it
does
just doesn't.
because it's an
Yeah,
autoimmune disease, so it
yeah,
can happen at any
yeah.
time,
Yeah.
at any
But I
time.
just think I get why people from the outside don't understand it
Yeah.
because although you can hold the gene, I don't think it's only 1% of people technically get triggered from it in their life. I think 1%, is that right?
It's
I think that's
about
what I read the other
1%.
day,
There's some
which is
countries where it's
crazy
about two. Yeah,
because
but
obviously in our family that's
yeah,
just not true.
yeah,
But generally 1% is very low
yeah.
actually. But yeah, so anyway, I got diagnosed in the summer holidays of after year four, but in our county you go from primary school to middle school to secondary school. So I was going into middle school, so I got diagnosed in the summer, and then I was starting a brand new school, brand new friends. I only knew three people in that school, and then obviously had this diagnosis. So it was quite a big change and it was quite
Mhm.
difficult. However, the school were very good at accommodating. Even back then, they gave me a separate meal. My name and my face and my autoimmune condition was on the wall with the only three other children had any allergies, which I know is very uncommon these days
Yeah.
because so many people have allergies now. But back then, in my school anyway, there was only three other people with any allergy, food allergy, which is
But
crazy because now that
it's
is not
amazing
common.
that
So
they looked after you guys.
I
So
know
yeah, yeah,
because they back then they didn't have to.
yeah.
Unfortunately, it did all change. The second year, we don't fully remember exactly what happened. I was trying to ask my parents the other day, and they aren't fully sure exactly the extent of what happened. But long story short, another company took it over, and they decided that it was too expensive to accommodate for me anymore, and that they weren't going to provide me with a separate meal or make me something separate. Obviously, my parents were like, "This is awful. This is discrimination,
Mhm.
basically." But back then, they didn't have the individual healthcare plans that are now in
Yeah.
place. This was before that time. So they did get away with it. And you would never get away with that now because that's just, yeah. So anyway, basically all they could offer me was a jacket potato, classic. So basically for 3 weeks, I had a jacket potato every day because in the school I was in, if you had a school dinner, you sat in one section. If you had a packed lunch, you sat in another section. Where were all my friends? School dinner. So I was having that. And then after 3 weeks, I was like, I cannot eat another jacket potato. So I sneakily brought a lunchbox and hid it under the table, but bought a drink. So it looked like I was having a school dinner, got away with it for about a week, and then got caught. And I got moved to the packed lunch section. And I remember crying my eyes out in the packed lunch section because I'd literally just been made to sit on my own because of something that is not my fault.
Hmm.
Obviously, my parents called up, they were like, this is not on, and they changed the whole system to allow everyone to be sat with each other. I mean, I still don't to this day understand why they needed to have a packed lunch section and a school dinner section. I mean, it just makes no sense. But the fact that they excluded me on purpose is just crazy. Anyway, so that's kind of what happened, but it did get better. And then obviously nowadays, everything's, I've seen such a progression of how the gluten-free world has progressed. Obviously, there never used to be a free for mile. Now, in some of the supermarkets, it's massive.
Hmm.
So we're very lucky that it's got a lot better. And I think for my sister that's just been recently diagnosed, she has it so much easier than I did, especially because I went through it with childhood and teenagehood. She sort of
Yeah.
missed that, and she's now in her adulthood. You sort of like done all the hard parts, GCSEs, that growing up stage, and now you're like an adult, where I feel like it's a bit easier to sort of adapt in that sort of way. So
So
yeah, that was
how
the
do you,
long-winded way.
how did you deal with it as a teenager, obviously? Because I'm a bit
Yeah,
like your sister. I was diagnosed later in life,
yeah,
and you know, yes, it was obviously an adjustment. I'm very lucky that, I'm a
yeah.
nutritional therapist, so I know how to read food labels and all the other bits and pieces. But thinking about children and probably more so teenagers or uni age people, I think it
Mm,
must be
yeah,
really, really hard because you
yes,
want to fit in, you want to be part of the crowd,
100%.
you want to, you want to eat out with everyone when you
Yeah.
go out, and so how did you deal with that?
Yeah, I actually would say the teenage years were definitely the hardest out of all
Mhm.
the stages of life I've had, because obviously at that point it's GCSEs, they're stressful, a lot of pressure on A levels, going to uni and, all these different things. And obviously your body's changing at that point as well. And you're learning about yourself and, new friends, secondary school, lots of different challenges. And then obviously the celiac on top of it. I did struggle, but it is actually why I started my page in the first place. So I used to be called Celiac Teenager. That was like the name that anyone back in the day, everyone knows me as that. So, like, for
Mhm.
example, Becky XL, we've been doing it about the same amount of time. Every time I see her in person, she always still calls me that because that's how she remembers me from
Yep.
being 15. um, so yeah, at that time, that's why I started it, because at that point, the cousins that I had that were celiac lived a lot more up north. They were not near me. I didn't have anyone in my circle that was celiac. I was very isolated, I felt. I think parties and sleepovers, very difficult, having to speak to the parents beforehand, know what the food situation is. Do I need to bring my own food? Can they cater for me? It's all these different things that you don't really think about when you're an adult, because sleepovers and parties, they sort of change a bit. It's more, having drinks, and you know it's a bit different. So, my parents had to do a lot of pre-planning, calling up parents, seeing if they understood it, which 90% of the time they'd never heard of celiac disease. And also restaurants couldn't really cater very well at that point. And then if you went to, say, a soft play party or bowling, I would have to bring my own food. So at that point, my mum would pack me like a party bag, like a nice party bag, like a gold or something, that looks nice, with food that I love, like my favorite foods,
Mhm.
even if it's the expensive stuff, because we wanted me to feel, like I was enjoying what I was eating. It might have been different to everyone else, but at least it was things that I enjoyed. If it was, say, a pizza party or something like that, my mum would specifically pack me a pizza so I felt included, because I was having everything everyone else was having.
Yeah.
I remember specifically going to a Pizza Express party, and this was before Pizza Express was certified by
Mhm.
Celiac UK. This is before they even did any of that. And at that point, I was talking to this friend very recently, and we were laughing about it now. At the time, it wasn't very funny. There was about 20 of us. I think we were 12 or 13. And the only thing that I could have was the chicken salad without the croutons. So it was basically chicken and leaves. And
Yeah.
sorry, but a 13-year-old, personally, at my age, I still don't even like salads now that much. I didn't want that, but I wanted to have something at the restaurant. I didn't want a party bag. I didn't want to feel
Mhm.
different. However, I felt more different because everyone was like, why are you having a salad and not these amazing pizzas, dough balls?
Yeah.
Um, and we talk about this all the time, me and that same friend now, because we're like, it's crazy to think that now when we go, I can get literally so many options on that menu, and I know I feel safe because Celiac UK are accredited. So I think it's a lot easier these days. And even Domino's, and that's a really good food. A lot of people do that for birthdays. If you go around to someone's and they have a pizza thing, it's
Yep.
usually a Domino's. And now we can get Domino's. So I think it's a lot, there's a lot more options. But I think the main thing is trying to remember what you can do and have, and not what you can't, and trying to have that positive attitude, because if you don't, it's going to be quite difficult. And
Mhm.
yeah, you're not going to have good experiences. I think it's important. And
Yeah.
it's not always about the food as well. It's about experiencing things with your friends, and
That's exactly
also
what I was going to
advocating and
say.
teaching your friends about it. I think it's really
Yeah.
important, especially at that age. Not everyone knows about allergies, intolerance, and autoimmune conditions. And you are that person that can advocate and teach people about it and
Mm.
educate the community. So that's something I had to do. And I was quite a confident teenager. I was more than happy to educate people, but I know that not everyone feels that way. But I think it's such an
Yeah.
important part is educating other people, because no one's going to learn unless you show them. People don't understand unless they are shown how to do it, and with actual examples they understand. Because unless you live with someone with it, how are you going to understand? It's not in your
You,
everyday life.
you
So
know what? You don't
those are the
know.
things I would probably
Yeah.
say.
I have loads of things. Like I was chatting to someone today who said that, she's fed up going out because everyone eats everything and she can't. And I just said
Yeah.
to her, but are you going for the food or are you going for the
Mm.
friendship?
Yeah.
It's
And
things
did you
like
see my
that.
post at the weekend as well?
Yeah.
You obviously commented on it. So if
Yeah.
anyone didn't see, I went to a festival. It was a very local festival, and I was very adamant there wouldn't be any food. Although the website did say celiac safe options, but you never really know. They
You
say
don't
it
know.
and it's like,
Yeah.
So I brought gluten-free sharp pretzels. That's a go-to for me, and some other stuff. I've done a post about it on my Instagram. And then I got to the festival and I obviously searched out everywhere and found literally nothing. The menu said at the bottom gluten-free options. You know when it says that and then it says GF, and then you look and not one thing says GF. I'm like, why even have that at the bottom?
Yeah.
What's the point? And then you ask the staff and they have no idea what you're talking about, or they're too busy because obviously they're just trying to get through the
Yeah.
sales. So I went for the music. I went for the country vibes. I went to see my friends. It was lovely weather. I wasn't there for the food part. They only ate food for like 20 minutes of the 8 hours we were there anyway. So yeah, you definitely have to, realize that not you're not always going to have a positive food experience. That's what it is, but it's some you just got to remember, are you there? Exactly like you said. Are you there for the food or are you there for the experience? If you're there for the food, then fair enough. Maybe it's not the best idea. But most of the time you will be there for the experience. And if you are, just go, positive mindset, bring your favorite food with you. You'll be allowed in with it as well. Even if
Yeah.
places say you're not allowed food, you
You
are
are.
allowed to bring it in.
Agree.
A lot of people don't realize that, but because it's an autoimmune condition and it's
Yeah.
like same with people with diabetes,
Hmm.
you're allowed to bring food in, because I've become friends with a someone that I met at Camp America last year, and when we were traveling America afterwards, I'm obviously celiac, she's diabetic, and a lot of these places wouldn't let us bring food in, but as soon as we said celiac disease and diabetic, straight away, no questions asked.
Hmm.
So you are allowed to bring food in, but that's always what I would say.
Yeah.
Positive mindset, that's the main way to get through a lot of these things, is just staying positive mainly.
I so agree. And when you said the advocating and the educating, it is so
Yeah,
important. I mean, I realize as well, like people do things without even thinking about it
yeah,
because that's our nature. And especially when you share a meal and, things go around the table and suddenly a fork goes from one thing to another, unless you educate your friends, they don't know and they're not supposed to know either.
mm,
But the more you talk about it, the more you
yeah,
educate, the more it becomes
exactly.
easier when you go out and you
Yeah,
want to socialize. So
yeah,
definitely.
exactly.
Yeah. So you mentioned why you started your page on Instagram, obviously
Yeah,
not just to educate, but also to show other teenagers at the time that,
yeah.
that there is a way of life and a full life as well with
Yeah.
celiac disease. Um, what would be your top three tips for someone growing up with celiac disease?
So I would definitely say the first one is staying positive, although sometimes it's not always going to be great. It's going to be some rubbish days, but making sure you have that positive mindset and spin everything to a positive. Bring those snacks always. That's the second one. Bring snacks everywhere you go. Celiac Sisters has this really nice snack pouch that a lot of people post about on Instagram. I love it. And you can fit everything in there or just in your bag. I always bring things that are quite airtight, not with all those air bubbles, or I
Yeah.
just clip it, open it and clip it so you can fit more in that bag. And also, again, like I've said a few times, educating and advocating for yourself and trusting your gut as well. If something doesn't feel right, and you don't feel safe with the food, or you've gone out and you think, oh, I don't know how I feel about this restaurant, or oh, I don't know if that person understands what they've been cooking, don't eat it. Be polite and explain why you're not having it so that they can learn and understand. but also don't make yourself eat it. It's absolutely not worth it. You know, don't be influenced or by any social pressures, because I think that age you can be sometimes, depending on who you're, you know, who you're surrounded by. People will be like, oh no, it's fine, just have a tiny bit, which I'm sure all of us have heard millions of times.
Yep.
But you have to advocate and tell people that you cannot. There is a reason for that. You know, even if they don't see the symptoms, you can explain to them about how it's internally affecting you and potentially could cause lifelong health problems. So, you know, there's reasons for it. We're not just being fussy, and that is like the one thing that I try and tell people is it's not fussy. It's literally a medical necessity. And
Hmm.
that's what you have to keep telling people. The more you tell people and the more you tell people how serious it is, the more people will understand.
Yeah.
And that's what our job is, as well as like making sure we're safe, is actually explaining to other people so that they understand. Because and still some people to this day don't know what it is if you talk to them. I've met so many people, even just in the last few months, who have never heard of it before, which is crazy because, you know, 1 in 100 people have it. And so many people still don't even know what it is. I mean, back when I was first diagnosed, I get why a lot of people didn't. But to think now, you know, the fact that Becky Excel's always on This Morning advocating for it, and you know, all these different, you know, pages where it's a lot more televised now. Some
Hmm.
people still don't get it. So if we're not explaining it to people, then how are they going to learn? So that's what I always say.
Definitely. And I think lots of people, when they think about gluten, they think about bread, they think about pasta,
Yeah.
but they
Mm,
forget about all the other things. And you know, as we find out on a day-to-day basis, there's so many food items that do have wheat in it, or that do have barley in it, or that do
yeah.
have, you know, all the things that you wouldn't even expect to have in it as well. So
Lots of
um,
good ones.
it is not just about, you know, gluten. Well, obviously it is about gluten, but
Yeah.
one of the things that I sometimes tell people, because I think that helps to understand a little bit more, is, you know, everyone knows about diabetes. Everyone kind of knows that it is sugar,
Yeah.
carbohydrate, and, you know, that many, or especially type 1 diabetics, take
Yeah.
insulin. So often I say, you know, my insulin is avoiding gluten.
Mm,
That is what doesn't make me sick, in the same
yeah.
sense that, you know, a diabetic, to help them with their diabetes or their sugar level, they might take insulin or some kind of pill. There is no pill for me. My
Yeah.
pill is avoiding gluten. And then
Yeah.
sometimes like, oh, okay then, you know.
Yeah.
Um, and
Yeah.
that's,
That's a really
I
good way of
think, for
doing it.
me, is one of the reasons why I get a bit annoyed that, you know, they took away the gluten-free on prescription,
Yeah.
because that's my meds.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's very sad. I
Mm.
really hope that they do bring it back, because I know that in a couple of areas they still have it. Because my auntie,
Yeah.
well, she just moved recently, but she did have it, and she was literally the only person I knew that still had them.
I
And she was
think it's
paying for them, but actually
Scotland.
it was so subsidized
Yeah.
that it was cheaper than the supermarket. So she thought, well, I'm getting it every month. Sometimes I get extra. Why not?
Sure.
I mean, back when I was diagnosed, obviously, because if you're under 18, it's free. We used to get so much food to the
Mm.
point where it was like, I remember one time we went, I think I was, I don't know, in my teenage years, and I went to my pharmacy. I was the only celiac, because I remember them telling me that you're the only person that orders this food, which is crazy in the town. I got 12 loaves of bread once
Wow.
for just me.
Okay.
Luckily, we have a chest freezer,
Yeah.
so I could put it all in the chest freezer. Oh, that's another thing. Buy a chest freezer, because if you find any reduced things, everything goes in there. I mean, our freezer right now is full of the things from the Free From Festival, the allergy show, all the yellow stickers, and then the Northampton event I went to a couple of weekends ago. It's filled with so much stuff. And
Mm.
like, you know, especially if it's just one of you in the family. I know it's now me and my sister, but you can't get through 12 loaves of bread before it goes moldy,
No,
especially in
no
this
way.
heat where it's obviously going to get moldy quicker. Freeze that, and I just take out a few slices each time,
Yeah.
and I just toast it. I don't even take the whole loaf out unless I know I'm going to use that whole loaf, which I don't usually. But if you're going to, then obviously, um, yeah, that's what I would say.
Okay. Great tips there. So I know you're quite busy or prolific on Instagram. Um, Cate The Coeliac, the
Yes,
your handle.
yes.
Yeah. And what kind of stuff do you share on there?
So I share basically it is a complete, lots of different things. So if I find anything new in the supermarkets, if I go to any new restaurants, travel tips. So I've done a lot of traveling in the last couple of years. I lived in Australia for 8 months. I've traveled Bali, Singapore. I lived and did Camp America last summer. I lived in Boston, and then I traveled Niagara Falls, Chicago, like all the places that side of America. So I share a lot of the finds different places I find there, and any sort of tips and tricks, and just kind of funny videos as well. And just, sometimes a few of the trending TikTok videos, and I make it celiac related. But I share this very, I say this quite a lot, but I am not the best baker or cook. I do not really enjoy it that much, if I'm being truly honest. I don't love doing it, but I'm really trying to make myself like it more, and I'm trying to get better at it. So I have been posting a few of like the dinners that I've been making, and like even tonight I'm making battered halloumi burgers, like with tzatziki and different things like that. So yeah, I try and I'm trying to be quite real on my channel, that I'm not, I know a lot of people that are gluten-free bloggers obviously post all these recipes. That's just not me. I don't think that ever will be, but that's fine. I don't, I, just, I do enjoy it sometimes, but I also don't always. And I like mixes. I like easy meals. I'm quite busy. I do, I have two other day jobs as well as doing my Instagram. So sometimes I do just look for quick, easy things, which I know a lot of other people want as well, because I know a lot of people live very busy lives. So that's why I try and show. And obviously, I started my Instagram 10 years ago this month, oh no, last month actually, which is crazy when I think about it. Because I'm 24 now, so I started it, yeah, when I was 14, 15, which is crazy. And my content's changed a lot since then. But yeah, I just like to post kind of what I feel really, but usually it's mainly celiac related. And sometimes I do live streams, bit of everything. Pools.
Right. So everyone watching, go and follow Cate the Coeliac. The link will also be in the description of the show. So no excuse not
Thank
to follow
you very
Cate.
much.
Yeah. So thank you very much. And I'm hoping that, it
Great.
has helped someone who grows up as a teenager or young adult with celiac disease. And any questions, feel free to ask. And if you haven't yet subscribed to the channel, subscribe now, and we'll be back next month with another episode. So thank you very much, everyone.
Right.